Blog Talk Radio. Welcome to Institute for Personal Development, where total consciousness is the new frontier. Kriya Yoga is the union of the individual with the divine. Join us as we explore the practices that initiate this process.
Well, good morning and welcome to the Voice of Yoga. Let's Talk Consciousness. I am your hostess, Lisa Winton, and with me is Kenny Toy, also known as Swami Jayananda, founder of Institute for Personal Development, located here in Hampton, New Hampshire. Well, good morning, Swami. Thanks for being here today. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing well, and how about you?
I'm doing great, thanks. Well, thank you, listeners, for tuning in. And today on the Voice of Yoga, we will be talking about the 13th week of the Kriya Yoga Spiritual Advance and the new moon in Libra. We're also going to discuss the significance of the Zodiacal sign Libra and its association with relationships. Swami will point out how to use the grand trine between Jupiter, Mars, and Uranus to help springboard our personal relationship with the forces that are essentially important to us. So, Swami, why don't you get us started? What is so important about this new moon that's in Libra?
Well, this new moon, just like any new moon, is a chance for a new beginning. It's the beginning of a new cycle. So it always presents the opportunity that if you're looking to affect any kind of changes, it's optimal. And of course, just like what we're saying here, that the astrological configuration does present the opportunity for us to start to recognize the importance of, this primary relationship with what we really do need. Because more and more as we start to reflect on it and utilize some of the symbolism, that we've been socialized with, there is a very basic, simple secret to life. And it's been so distorted and misunderstood, that we kind of miss it completely. But to understand, the concept of relationship and how to use your relationships to help you understand a little bit more about yourself. And I think when the sun and the moon are both in Libra, which is the sign of relationship, it becomes more apparent, more obvious to us. Because one of the things that, we're always saying here is that what surrounds us is within us. I grew up with an expression, show me your friends and I'll tell you who you are. The concept of like attracts like does play out. And oftentimes there are collisions that happen between, our inner sense of who we are and the outside world. And a lot of times, when it doesn't line up, usually the conflict is that we're not identifying with these aspects of ourselves. And so as a result, they're just experienced as a projection. So a lot of times when you're troubleshooting, especially like a yoga practice, and you want to know just who you are, just look at your environment. Take a good look at what is surrounding you. And then, of course, what are the goals and objectives that we're talking about here? This whole thing of union of the individual with the divine. And how is that a viable human enterprise?
I've heard you talk before about coloring our world, and when you have this relationship with the divine, it makes everything that much better. So when we're talking about relationships, I'm understanding that if I have my relationship with the divinity, then that makes all my other relationships that much better. So we should start with that first and not the other way. In other words, I don't want to have to try to have this relationship with my family or friends first. I want to have it with the divine first. Would that be right?
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. And I think that's oftentimes why it fails so bad, is because we try and do it the other way. That we're embroiled in our intimate and interpersonal relationships. And so it doesn't give us the opportunity to separate from our attachment to that to make this deeper connection to something that's more subtle. Which is what we've been saying. I mean, that's the yoga part. And it doesn't negate what's happening in the outside world, but it does make it smaller. And the other thing that we always talk about is it definitely changes the exchange of energy that we have with our environment. Because a lot of our relationships, as we start to realize, I mean, especially when you look at the whole concept of, the dysfunctional family dynamic, why is it failing so bad? Is because we're competing for energy on a limited level. And so if we had this primary relationship, we wouldn't be competing for energy on this limited level. We would have what we call internal support. You would have a relationship with a resource that was inexhaustible. So then you would have the capacity to unconditionally give, which is the term that we use kind of loosely, is the term called love, which is, again, one of those all-encompassing words that can mean anything to anybody. But when you research the word, love, by definition, is basically human perfection. And for us to be able to unconditionally give, we really have to have this primary relationship with our divinity. In fact, the concept of love, theoretically, and especially in this model, has very little to do with what goes on between human beings. It has everything to do with what goes on between the human being and your divinity. Because it's that connection, it's that relationship that makes this concept of unconditional giving possible. And oftentimes we're trying to do that without this interconnection.
So that saying, love thy neighbor as thyself, are we talking about in the human sense or in the divine sense?
Well, to answer your question, in order to really love thy neighbor as thyself, in the Christian sense of the word, you need this primary relationship to actually have that experience. Because when matter and mind come together with the life force, then that's what impregnates the seed of the mind. That's what expands your identity beyond the limits of seeing yourself as a separate entity. And from that broader sense of awareness, you recognize that the same soul that's animating you is animating your neighbor. So now the whole concept of what you're putting out is what you're getting back has very different, I want to say, dynamic when you recognize that we're all one, as opposed to when you're seeing yourself as a separate entity and you are performing conduct in hopes of getting some sort of reward for your effort. It's a completely different dynamic.
I'm wondering if you could take a few minutes and explain to us, in our description we talked about the grand trine with Jupiter, Uranus, and Mars. Can you just give us a quick rundown as to what those planets represent, and then how that relates to us developing that relationship with the divine?
Yeah. See, Mars is that part of us that, is associated with desire, what I want and how I get what I want. And so one of the things that we always talk about is, you can't get rid of your Mars. And what you desire is going to determine your nature. Now, Jupiter is the expansive principle of the universe. It is what enlarges everything. And it has an awful lot to do with our higher mind. It has this whole thing of the concept of expansion of consciousness. And it is directly related to your reality system, your aspirations. And Uranus is basically the life force. Uranus is the light that passes through opaque objects. It is directly related with, in yoga we call the word prana. And so when you have, favorable aspects, this grand trine, that it makes all of these influences more easily accessible to you, so that if you are looking to internalize the life force in your body as a symbol to validate yourself, that you're looking to become addicted to what you really do need, that this new moon would be a favorable time to do that, because the wind would be kind of at your back.
All right, thank you for that. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about that we were discussing earlier is, let's talk about the spiritual advance, the week 13, and talking about the development of a healthy ego. So how do we do all of that? How do we develop a healthy ego and still have this connection to the divine? Because I think there are some people out there that think that if you have an ego, you can't possibly be spiritual.
Yeah, that's something that we actually talked about in another show. And again, coming back to what I was saying, it's all going to come down not so much to my sense of self, because there's a big difference between the mystical experience, the psychotic experience, and, drug-induced states. And the primary difference between these three different experiences, which can literally be associated with the concept of transcendence, that the difference between the mystic, the psychotic, the neurotic, and the drug-induced states is that the mystic has a strong sense of self. Being spiritual is not a loss of self-conscious awareness. It is a more inclusive point of identification. See, the psychotic, the neurotic, the drug-induced states, that is a loss of self-conscious awareness. See, the psychotic, the neurotic, the drug-induced states, they are being controlled by forces that are beyond their scope of power. The ego is, the part of consciousness that gives you your ability to navigate, to drive these forces, to steer yourself in a particular direction. And the thing that I think we have to really understand is that in order to develop a healthy ego, it's all going to boil down into what is it that I desire.
Great, thank you for that. Well, I'd like to take a moment, and I know we have some callers out there that may have some questions for you. So callers, if you would like to ask any questions, I can open it up right now for you. All right, I think what we'll do now is we'll open up the phone lines again after we hear a word from our sponsors. So, listeners, we will be right back with you.
Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnamudachyate.
If you are looking for a Samadhi-based experience, IPD Kriya Yoga has the goods. A complete yoga program that includes the practices and the process. Starting with the separation from mother, including the labors and tasks of the hero and the return as a whole person. Practice makes perfect only when practice is whole. Kriya Yoga is a path of action, knowledge, and devotion. Samadhi, or total consciousness, is experienced by knowing and doing with devotion. Call or click now and get started. 603-929-0303 or www.ipdtransform.com. Namaste.
Well, welcome back. For those of you just joining us, you are listening to The Voice of Yoga, and we are talking consciousness. All right, so we were talking about the ego and that it all comes down to desire. Now, I know we have some other notes that we want to talk about today, so I think we should get talking about the good and evil. So, Swami, I'm going to bring it over to you.
Yeah, development of the ego and this whole concept of what is it that I desire. Because we've been kind of socialized with this ongoing struggle between good and evil, God and the devil. And this relationship has been portrayed as a battle between the old man with a white beard and a white robe versus the black-bearded image with red tights, a tail, and horns. And when you have this type of imagery, nothing really happens with it because you're in the astral plane. You're in a dimension of reality, the realms of waves, which is also dualistic. See, what we desire is of the utmost importance, and reality is multidimensional. And that was where the discoveries of quantum physics have helped enormously with this concept of spirituality. That reality is multidimensional, that underlying matter is energy, and underlying energy is the void. Now, whatever it is that we desire will determine kind of like your fate. If you desire particles, you will be of a lower animal nature. If you desire waves, you will be of a human nature. But if you desire the void or the nothing, this indivisible unified state, the life force, you will be of a divine nature. And so this ongoing struggle between good and evil wasn't between these people that we think represented these force fields, but it was actually the force fields themselves. See, when you are drawn and attached to something that is dualistic, your mind will remain small. Your feelings will be reduced to insatiable cravings. You're drawing from a source of sustenance that is very limiting. Now, what religion and yoga was designed to do was to educate people in how to separate from this very limiting source of sustenance, this concept of evil, and liberate yourself by literally rebirthing your body in this other, more subtle source of sustenance, becoming addicted to what you really do need. But when you do that, then matter and mind come together with new information, and that is what facilitates this progressive cycle. This is what enables us to grow psychologically and spiritually. And this is what enables us to develop what's called a healthy ego, an ego that will have self-control, self-mastery, but also have an expanded sense of awareness.
I was talking to somebody the other day about having awareness, and when you talk about having an expanded sense of awareness, for somebody that may be new to yoga, what might that look like to that particular person to have this expanded awareness?
Yeah, wouldn't that be nice? Probably the closest thing that I could give you to be associated with this expanded sense of awareness would be if you've ever had what's called a lucid dream. You know, that a lucid dream is when you are kind of still dreaming and you're in the dream state, but your conscious mind invades the dream state. That you're awake, but at the same time you're asleep. That you're in a position where you can actually bring somebody in, you can take somebody out. That would be more of what I would consider to be, you know, this expanded sense of self. You know, that in Kriya Yoga philosophy, we say being awake, being asleep, being alive, and being dead, there's no difference, which is a really powerful statement. You know, and the more you contemplate that, but the way that we break it down is we say that, well, we know what it's like to be awake, we know what it's like to be asleep, but we don't know what it's like to be dead. But then you kind of look at your dream state. You know, you break it down, and you're lying in bed, you're sound asleep, you're having a dream. And whatever it is that you're dreaming, you're experiencing the dream as if it's something that's happening to you. Where, in fact, you are everything in that dream. But you're looking through this tiny little keyhole, and you're seeing yourself as a separate entity. Now, the same is true with the waking state. See, we go through life, and we're looking at things through this tiny little keyhole, and we're experiencing it as if it's happening to us. The term in yoga is called Aham Brahmasmi. I am the creative principle. You are everything in your reality, but you're looking through this tiny little keyhole. And that's what, when you rebirth your body in the life force, and you initiate this progressive cycle, your identity will realign itself with a source of sustenance that is unchanging and unlimited. That will start to expand your identity. From that broader sense of awareness, you start to see things differently.
We've had discussions in the past about simplifying our practice or simplifying your life, whether it's food or work or whatever it might be. And you always say the three magic words is put God first. So I think essentially what we talked about earlier in the program today about having this relationship with the divine, I know that when I am going through my everyday patterns, if you will, then if I put God first, it really kind of changes my perspective on everything. So would you say that for the lay person or somebody who's really new to yoga, that if they can just remember to put God first in all parts of their life, that would be a step in their direction to having this relationship with the divine?
Well, to answer your question, probably. You know, I mean, the key to the whole thing is that you literally have to get it in your body. You have to feel connected to the life force. Now, one of the things is that once you understand the association between symbols and feelings, you know, your body is like a monkey. And a monkey won't let go of one branch unless it has another branch in the other hand. So if you're accustomed to using what you really do need to produce a feeling in your body that you're happy, see, that I think can give you a starting point, because when you have that joy, that feeling that you're good enough, that you're special, then everything else is easier. And that's like what you said. I mean, when you have this primary relationship, it helps you to color the rest of everything else you're doing because you have that feeling in your body that you're happy. And, that enthusiasm for life starts to spill out and you start to experience it in everything that you do.
We're going to be starting to closing down our program shortly. Do you have any other comments or thoughts that you would like to let our listeners know about this new moon and the grand trine?
Well, I think what I would like to do though is invite people to join the spiritual advance. Where you can actually start to employ some of the strategies that we're recommending and start to experience some of the benefits, that come with it. And like you said, this week we are developing a healthy ego, trying to get this light in your soul, which will produce beauty in the person, that will eventually spill out into harmony in your home, honor in the nation, peace in the world. But it's not just an intellectual accomplishment. That's one of the things that I think we really try and emphasize here is that you have to feel connected to it. You have to literally rebirth your body in the life force and working with the physical body, refining it, distilling, purifying, so that you prepare it for the invocation of this subtle source of sustenance, that it's not magic, it's physics. It's like attracts like. And two things can't occupy the same space at the same time. But once you are established in this primary relationship, then a good way to troubleshoot your practice is to just take a good look around you, because what surrounds you is within you. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you will now be totally immersed in, peace, love, happiness, and goodness. You could be in the midst of, disturbing situations, but you would not be emotionally affected by it. And I think that would be the key significator. That would be the best way to evaluate how well established you are in this relationship.
I would also like to invite our listeners to join us on our Theory 2 classes, which are on Thursday evenings, and you can access that through Powwow. And that gives you the opportunity to talk about how you can really bring yoga from the mat into your life. So in closing, again, on our website, you can follow Swami on Pinterest and Twitter and Facebook. So keep those comments and questions and curiosities coming, because we do enjoy hearing from you. And be sure to tune into our program next week, where we are going to explore the harvest time, what we sow, what we reap. So thank you, listeners, for joining our program today, The Voice of Yoga. I am Lisa Winton with Swami Jayananda. We'll be signing off. Have a wonderful Kriya Yoga kind of day. Namaste.
Yeah, and at this time I would like to say, thanks for listening, and I hope everybody does have a great day, and I will wish you all a namaste.